Good afternoon and welcome to the Imagine 2022 programming sponsored by the President's Office, Career Services, and the Oswego Alumni Association. My name is Melinda Brancato. I'm a freshman studying public relations, and thank you for joining us for our Energizer event, Mindful Monday. Get energized by self-care. I'm going to be facilitating this session today. Career coaches Mary and Jackie are also here and will help monitor the chat. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's event will be recorded and will be posted on the Imagine 2022 website, so you can dive back in and share with your friends who weren't able to attend. Please keep your microphone muted and to avoid disruptions during the presentation. You are welcome and encouraged to use the chat throughout. If you haven't already, please fill out the Imagine 2022 interest form and check out the events on the Imagine 2022 website so you don't miss out on any of the amazing sessions throughout this month. The links will be shared in the chat. Without any further delay, I'm very excited to introduce our presenter, Kyle Dzintars. He is a licensed mental health counselor at the SUNY Oswego Counseling Center. He coordinates outreach and supervises the Counseling Outreach Peer Educator Program, COPE or COPE team. He is a SUNY Oswego alumni and earned his bachelor's in creative writing in 2008 and his MS in mental health counseling in 2011. As a student, he worked as a student manager for the Fitness Center and was an editor for the Great Lakes Review publication. He is also a certified child center play therapist and previously worked in the Oswego community in private practice. Take it away, Kyle.
Thanks, Melinda. Appreciate it. And thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to be here at this point, especially for some students who might be on the winter break. Some I know might be taking winter courses. I think at this state in the world, we're at a good point to talk and focus a lot more on what self-care means and how we can practice that both individually, but also collectively. So I'm here to talk a little bit about getting energized. And you'll hear in this presentation a little bit of duality in what things can mean. To me, energized means multiple things, right? Like it could be, I feel energized, I'm motivated, I'm working toward my goals. But it could also be a state of recovery and healing. I'm recharging, I'm getting to a place where I can make good choices for myself because things have been rough. So I see a little bit of two directions that we can explore with this. And we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to practice self-care and hopefully give you some very practical ideas, strategies that you can take with you when you leave here. So I appreciate you being here, especially to start the new year off and before our spring semester gets up and going. So I think you can give yourself some props for taking time to be here and actually learn how to take care of yourself moving forward. So that being said, let's just start by taking a breath. So wherever you are, whatever capacity you're at, just get comfortable in your seat. Maybe you're laying down, maybe you're stationed somewhere. Just put yourself in a comfortable position. So for some people, that's feet on the floor. For some people, that's laying down flat. For some people, it's putting your arms in a comfortable position. So that maybe that's up on the armrests on your chair or in your lap, on a table. Do whatever feels comfortable. And when you get to that position, it might take a little bit of wiggling around and figuring it out. But we're just going to start with a nice deep breath in and slow breath out. Just notice if you're holding any tension anywhere. Notice if you're still not quite comfortable. Maybe that's lifting up your shoulders a little bit, shaking out. Move your legs or feet, your hands. Get to that position of comfort. And when you're comfortable, again, we're going to take another deep breath in. And slow breath out. So when you've arrived, pay attention to how you're feeling during this presentation. I think it's really important to be both present, to listen and attend to the world around us, but also to pay attention internally. What's going on for us? Are we comfortable? Are we safe? Are we grounded? Or are we distracted? Are we getting lost in other things? Try your best to be here now. You've chosen to be here for this, to put your attention, your focus into it. So make sure that you are giving that focus to this moment. It's the only place that we should be. And I think it's really helpful, especially internally, to reduce some of the stress and anxiety we feel when we're pulled in multiple directions throughout the day. So here you are. We'll share that moment together. All right. So I'll ask for anyone who feels comfortable to put in the chat, what causes stress for you at this point in the world? So you can throw those in the chat, and I'll give a little disclaimer here, because talking about stress is difficult. It's not always easy to bring up these topics, to share the struggles that we're having, to share the difficult challenges we face, to share what doesn't feel good. So if you start to notice what you feel as you face some of these, that'll help you to make some really good choices for yourself. For the purposes of this presentation, if you start to feel overwhelmed as we just talk about these stressors, don't hesitate to stand up, walk away for a second, take a deep breath, close your eyes, whatever it is that helps you to stay grounded. We're going to talk a little bit about the stressors before we can talk about what we can do to alleviate some of the stress that comes with those. So take care of yourself through this moment. It's short, it's temporary, it's just a piece of this, but I think sometimes it does carry a lot of weight. We carry a lot with us throughout the day. So for those of you who are participating, I appreciate it. All right, so far. Lack of time, completing priorities, too many things going on at once. I hear that. The uncertainty of the future, definitely. We've gone through a lot of changes. Doing too much, spreading yourself thin. Yep. Managing priorities and maintaining physical health. Oh yeah, that balancing act. Scheduling. Inadequacies, feeling inadequate to handle everything, and then pressure. Yes. So I think this is a solid list for what a lot of people are experiencing right now. And I know there's more to it as well. COVID, family health, for sure. So I made a little bit of a list myself, and I'm glad to hear that some of you can already relate to some of that are on this list. So with the amount of responsibilities and pressures, especially that students feel, right? You're working on your future, you're trying to get through your current semester, your current work, your current goals, and then some of the bigger world issues and environmental factors that play a part in how we feel. There's a lot going on. We've been in the pandemic, coming on 2 years, and I think that's a lot of time that's spent having to adapt and adjust to changes. Just recently with the newest COVID strain, we've had to see different changes and adjustments. And I think while we can get used to this stuff happening, it doesn't make it easier. Change is not easy, and humans don't adapt well to constant change. We struggle with that. So part of these stressors are those big world events that are going on. Some have to do with academics, as some of you mentioned. So just working on actual projects, assignments, keeping up with some of the goals that come along with school. I put in some connections that could be friendships, maintaining friendships. The more isolated we've been, the harder it is sometimes to keep those connections and maintain them. Family situations. So for some of you, like being at school is one thing you're able to kind of separate, but maybe you still hear what's going on at home, or maybe some of those situations carry into your academic world. They interfere with doing classes and classwork. Grief. We've lost a lot of things in this pandemic on top of just the normal life experience of loss. Injustice. We keep hearing as people are adapting to new understanding of the world, changing with how things are unfolding, and trying to make sure that there's conversations that are going on about the treatment of people throughout the world. And I think a lot of those carry into our day-to-day conversations with friends and family. They end up in our classrooms. So that plays a big factor in how we're feeling. World events, if you are someone who stays up on current events, the news can be heavy. Financial strain, there's a lot of stress that's going on when it comes to just keeping a job, getting paid enough to maintain some of the basic needs in our lives, like housing and food. And then planning for the future, keeping up with our emails, all of the stuff that kind of comes along with school. So I don't bring this up to re-traumatize you. I think we all know what these feel like, and we carry them with us throughout different moments in our lives. The only thing I ask is that you pay attention as I brought these topics to the surface. What did you feel internally? Did you notice any specific points of tension, any thoughts that arose? Did you notice any changes in your breathing, in your posture? Any kind of change that you might notice is going to become really important. So you can throw these in the chat as well. But what does it feel like when you face the stress that's going on in your life? What kinds of either observations or internal feelings or thoughts come up when you're starting to feel stressed? And then do you have any warning signs that you're getting overwhelmed? So if you want to put those in the chat, if you're comfortable with that, that would be helpful. I know for myself, when I start to get really stressed, I hold it in my jaw. My teeth get clenched. I might grind my teeth a little bit, and then the muscle on the side of my face gets like really sore and tense. So that's how I know I probably need to take a break, like go do some yoga, go for a walk, get away from my computer or something like that. All right, I see some more coming in here. Tight muscles in the neck and back, definitely. I think a lot of people hold that kind of tension, and especially when we're on our computers or our phones, we end up hunched over. A lot of our tension gets held in our neck, shoulders, back. Grinding my teeth at night, so someone can relate there. Body feels overall heavy. Yes, so some days are just like blah, like moving around doesn't feel easy. Headaches, yep, so some of that tension you feel even inside like your head and your brain area, like some kind of tension, muscle clenching. Breath becomes shorter, noises become louder. Yep, so sometimes that affects sleep, right? Not being able to get settled and feel comfortable. Elevated heart rate, yep. And eating changes, yeah. So all of these are really important to just pay attention to. What kinds of changes happen as you are experiencing increased stress? When you notice those things, you can make subtle changes to check in with yourself, to take care of yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to coping. But I bring up the stress so that we can start to pinpoint what it is we feel as a reaction to stress, either environmental, in terms of like our society around us, our culture around us, or just internal, some of the pressure that we feel on ourselves or things that we have to manage. So I appreciate you sharing some of what you go through because you're not alone in those. And I think we don't really talk about these so much. We hear, when people don't feel so great, what's going on. But that link to stress, anxiety, some of the stuff that we carry around is really important. So coming out of that, let's ground ourselves again. We just faced a bunch of stressors, some things that are pretty heavy. This is a very simple grounding practice. And all it takes is some observation. So I want you to identify 5 things in your space that you can see. You just have to say them to yourself. You don't have to do anything else with them. Just look around and 5 things that you can see. So maybe that's a poster in your room or the window, the screen in front of you. And when you've got those 5 things, the next I want you to identify is 4 things that you can feel physically. So maybe that's your chair, where you're sitting on your chair, maybe your feet on the ground, maybe you're holding your own hand. 4 things that you're touching. Next, 3 things that you can hear in your space. This could be something outside your window. This could be me talking into your headphones. It could be the sounds of your computer, your phone. Next up, 2 things that you can smell. That could be you have a candle going or maybe some food cooking. And finally, 1 thing that you can taste. Hopefully something pleasant, Maybe you had something nice to eat or drink recently. And so when you identify all of those things, you become very present. You can't be anywhere else to experience those things. They bring you to the here and now, this present moment. And for a lot of us that experience stress, I know we noticed some of the physical sensations. For a lot of people, it also includes this thinking part, worrying about what the future brings, right? Like my next thing that I have to complete or my next due date. For some, it brings into thoughts of the past, things I wish I had done differently, things I'm still thinking about or feeling connected to past events. All of those things take us out of the present moment. And we can't really do much with those. We can make plans and prepare for the future, but we aren't there yet. So sometimes it's just really important to connect with the here and now because we have the ability to make choices for ourselves in this moment. And maybe that means making healthy choices, doing something good to take care of ourselves, doing something nurturing. So there's a lot of ways that we can take advantage of being present, but we just have to encourage ourselves to get there, to be here now. So I encourage you to practice that, especially if you find yourself lost in those thoughts about the future or the past, just getting kind of consumed by thinking. Practice being as present as possible in those moments. All right. So coping strategies. I know we're talking a little bit about grounding techniques, getting comfortable in your body. What else do people gravitate towards when it comes to coping? What do you do to feel better when you're not feeling so great? I know for myself, I mentioned yoga before. Yoga is really helpful for me. That ends up grounding me. It gets me in touch with my body. I get to get a little bit of energy out and slow myself down. So that's one I gravitate towards quite a bit. All right, I see walks, journaling, hot cup of tea and reading a book. Sounds very nice. Reading, singing, great. Listening to calm, happy music. Reading, listen to music, listen to music. Music seems to be a theme here. I like it. Can be so helpful for our well-being. Talking to people that we love and care about. Journaling. Counting to 10, slowing your breathing down. Great. Time with pets, definitely. Pets can be very, very helpful. And family. Awesome. So this is a great list of things to choose from. And I see some overlap with some of you too, right? Like taking care of our physical body can be really helpful. Slowing our body down entirely, like our breathing, maybe taking time to just get outside a little bit. And then I see music. So maybe setting the mood that you want to feel, maybe feeling understood through your music, maybe changing the way that something is feeling by putting on either the opposite feeling music or encouraging yourself to be with what you're feeling. And then I see a lot of connection, whether that's with family, friends, pets, whoever it is that we feel connected to. All of those are great. And then take a night to do a face mask. Yes. So taking care of your physical self, right? Like being able to relax, making the space and time for that. So thank you all for sharing so much of what you do. I hope that you find a way to make time in your schedules for these things, because they're oftentimes the first things to go when we start to feel overwhelmed. But they are the most important because we feel best when we take care of ourselves so that we can meet some of our goals, so that we can find ourselves energized and kind of recuperate some of the energy that we are drained. All right, so I have a little bit of a list here. Some things that I wanted to go through. I won't spend too much time on them since you mentioned a bunch already. I like to emphasize self-compassion and kindness to ourselves in everything that I'm doing right now, because from what I've heard from students and faculty and staff especially, is that a lot of us turn inward when things aren't going well, or we're perceiving that things aren't going well. And it makes it really easy to be hard on ourselves, to compare ourselves to other people, to feel really down on ourselves. And if we're the ones who are doing that, we spend the most amount of time with ourselves. If our relationship with ourselves isn't helpful, that becomes a problem. So try introducing kind ways of talking to yourself. Notice when your inner dialogue is getting a little heavy. It's becoming a little too negative. It's becoming too critique heavy. Can you introduce some things that you're doing well, that you feel proud of? Can you give yourself a break just because you're not doing things up to what you expected to do them? Because maybe some things are different or changed or are heavier than you expected. Find those ways to talk kindly to yourself, especially during challenging times, because that's when you need the most compassion. And I think of this sometimes as if your best friend came to you struggling, feeling like they weren't doing good enough, you probably wouldn't be the person who's like, yeah, you need to do better. You'd probably be the person who gives them credit for what they've been able to do and is understanding of maybe what they're experiencing. You deserve that from yourself as well. Like, other people value that, I'm sure, about you. Try and incorporate that into your own conversations with yourself, because you deserve that kind of kindness. Sleep, that's a crucial one here. The harder sleep becomes, the more anxious, stressed, nervous, overwhelmed we become. And it also is really difficult when our anxieties and stress interrupt our sleep. So trying to find those basic methods to get on a structure, a sleep schedule for yourself, and doing relaxing activities right before bed can be really helpful for just setting the tone for how sleep can be. We'll talk a little bit about other ways that you can alleviate through the day to help promote better sleep, but try making that end of the day routine really calming. So maybe that's taking a break from your phone for a little bit. Maybe that's reading a book, as some of you mentioned. Maybe it's doing a little meditation or a little bit of yoga. Slow yourself down to ease into that. Sometimes our devices just keep us energized and going, and we think that we're like looking at our phone until we fall asleep, but it never really works that way. We end up just disrupting our cycle a little bit more. So limit your time on those devices. I know it's snowy, at least in Oswego right now, so maybe outside isn't where you want to be. But on nice days, it might be a good thing to just get out of your house for a little bit, take a walk, enjoy the snow while it's here. And then, as some of you mentioned, taking time for yourself, taking time for other people as well. So connecting, not being alone in all of this can be really helpful. Someone mentioned physical health. So what are you doing to take care of yourselves? Maybe going for a walk, practicing some yoga, doing some of those out-home workouts, or going to the gym, something like that. Anything that just helps you to feel like you're taking care of your physical body. Movement is really vital to feeling good. And it doesn't have to be extreme movement. You don't have to go run a marathon, but find ways to just get a little bit of activity, movement in your body. Practicing mindfulness, as we've been doing, right? We took a breath at the start. We did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. Make time to ground yourself, to practice that mindfulness and to be in the present moment. Doing self-expression of any kind. Some of you said singing is really helpful. Journaling is really helpful. All of those are great for expressing what you're going through, what you're feeling. I would encourage also break out of those comforts. So maybe a random dance party when you're feeling down and you put some music on, even if it's private, maybe that changes up the way that you're feeling. Singing, a lot of research has actually been showing that singing and using your voice, even humming, if you're not into singing, can be really helpful for grounding your nervous system. It actually changes the way that our body is working. So those people who are belching in their cars and like singing along to music, whistling, humming, all of that stuff is actually really helpful for our nervous system. So if you find yourself whistling or humming, like, embrace that. Practicing healthy boundaries. I know this one's tough. We all have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things on our plates. Sometimes it's okay to say no to things, especially when we need time for ourselves. Being able to rest, to make choices that are best for us specifically. Maybe that's a day off, a mental health day. Maybe that's saying no to something, even though it's a good opportunity. There are other opportunities, there are other responsibilities that you have going on. So being able to say no, being able to let go of things that aren't really helping or continuing to promote your growth and development, all that stuff becomes really important. Making good choices for yourself there. And then finally, knowing that you are always more than just your productivity. in school, I think we sometimes get lost in that, right? Like our grades kind of define us, and they set the tone for how we're doing in school and how we're going to do as we move towards graduation. Uh, and I think it's important that we understand that we are more than just those grades, just those responsibilities. We do a lot in our lives. We are connected to a lot of people. And I think it's really important to just know that you're enough as you are. I think we hear that a little bit more these days because I think it really needs to be emphasized. When we get lost in our productivity and we define ourselves that way, it's not always easy for us. We struggle with that. All right. So I'm going to skip over one here. And if you have a device available to you, a phone or something like that, I have a grounding techniques worksheet. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about some grounding techniques, you can use your phone to take a picture, a QR code that. And I have a link somewhere. I would have to find it though. So if I can get that to you, I will get that to you before the end of this. But you should be able to access it using the QR code. It provides 30 grounding techniques. So if you're ever starting to feel overwhelmed, if you're starting to feel like out of touch with the present moment, these can be really helpful for just getting you settled. There's different ways that we can go about it. So maybe that's connecting with your body, maybe that's settling your mind, or maybe that's just taking care of yourself. There are different ways that we can approach it. So you can use that QR code, get some ideas for yourself. Some of them I'm sure you've tried or encountered before. The important part is to remember, do what works for you. Not everything works for everybody. And even things that work once doesn't always work again. So the more options you have for yourself, the better you're going to feel. And I know we are coming up on time here, so I will end with just some reminders just for you all to keep in mind for yourselves that you deserve rest. You are going through a tough time right now, and you're doing the best that you can with what you've got. Success includes our failures. Sometimes when things don't work out, it doesn't mean that it's a total failure. Sometimes it leads us to the good things in our lives. And then I know some of you mentioned you have a lot of responsibilities, expectations. So maybe doing many of the things is better than all of the things, right? We can't do all of the things. There are going to be some things we have to say no to. And then finally, just remember that you are enough as you are right now, and continue to be here as much as you can. Be in the present moment. Give yourself those reminders through mindfulness, and continue to take care of yourselves the best you can. So I hope you have some good ideas to walk away, some strategies there, and hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That was a very refreshing presentation. I feel great after that. I definitely thought that the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method was great, and I resonated with what you said about productivity. If any of you guys have questions for Kyle, I know you'd be willing to answer those. If there's a way that you'd like us to contact you, do you have that preferred method?
Yes, I do. I'll put that in the chat. If you have any questions or anything that you just want to reach out to me about, you can reach out to my email.
Okay. All right.
Let's put that in there. And then because I work at the counseling center, if you're interested in counseling services throughout the semester, if you're taking a class right now, you still have access to our services. I'll put the email address for the counseling services office there as well.
Great. Thank you so much again for this presentation. To our audience, thank you so much for engaging with the presentation.